Spinning reels are one of the most versatile fishing tools out there, and they're one of the first reels that people use when they start fishing. So in this video, we're going to be talking about what I believe to be my top 5 best practices to using one of these reels, and we're going to get into it so we can get you on the water so you can start fishing like a pro. So let's jump into it. Okay, so spinning reels have a relatively basic concept to them. There's not a whole lot of moving parts and they're pretty easy to understand, but coming in at number 1, you need to know your terminology and you need to be familiar with your reel before you really start using it, because it's gonna make your life a whole lot easier. It's gonna make your experience a lot better. So I'm gonna talk about 3 main components that I think are pretty important. Now, the first one being this little side loop here. Okay, this is known as your bail. Okay, so it's your bail release. This guy that spins here, this is gonna be your bail of line. Aside from your bail, okay, this is what you're gonna flip back when you want more line to come off of the reel, right? Now, the next thing, this here is gonna be your crank. Pretty basic stuff, right? But this is how you're gonna crank more line onto the spool. And then the next thing, the third thing that's pretty important, is your drag tensioner knob. Now, this knob is going to allow you to adjust how easily you want your line to pull off of the spool. Say like when you're catching a fish and the fish is pulling on it, it's going to pull drag, right? So if we tighten this down clockwise, it's going to tighten that, and if we turn it counterclockwise, it's going to loosen it. And that's something that you should know before you start using a spinning reel, because if you don't know that, well, you might get a fish on and your drag might be set really, really loose, and you're probably going to have a tough time catching it. So that is number 1. As we move on to number 2, it's going to be how your hand placement on your reel. Now, some people may tell you that you have to hold the reel this way or that way. I'm going to kind of go away from that and disagree a little bit. I think that you should hold your reel with your rod however is most comfortable for you, okay? Because I know that everybody has different sized hands, so it's unrealistic to say, hey, you have to hold it this one way or it's not going to work, right? For me personally, I hold my reel with my 2 fingers on the back side and 2 fingers on the front side of the reel there. Some people will hold it like this with 1 finger in the back and they just leave their pinky there. Others, which I'm not super into this, I mean, I do it once in a while, but I think it feels kind of odd, is they'll actually hold the reel with no fingers on this shaft here, which it's totally up to you guys. I mean, whatever is most comfortable, but you want to get familiar with it so that you know that when you go to cast it, you have a general idea of how you want to hold it, just so that you can have your cast be the most accurate as possible. Okay, so for the third best practice, we're actually going to be getting into casting the reel now. This might be something that's overlooked by a lot of anglers, but I think it is pretty important, because when we cast, we want everything to be pretty much the same every single time we do it. So this is just going to give you more consistency in your cast so that nothing is different and you're more so just on the same playing field every single time, so that every single cast has the opportunity to be just as good as the last one. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that where your line comes off of your bail, you want that to be at the top of your spool here. You're going to want it to be in line with your rod so that the line is at the top here. So because what that's going to do, it's going to allow us to put the tip of our finger on that line there, and then we're going to open our bail, and now we're ready to cast. Okay, so it's pretty simple, but like I said, this is going to give you more consistency with your cast so that every single one is just like the last. Okay, now as we start to move on to actually casting the reel, we're coming in at number 4, which is your techniques to casting. There's a few different ways to do this, and there's a few different ways to cast your spinning reel. There's a sidearm cast, there's an overhand cast, and then there's actually something that's called a roll cast. And what that is it's just a little simple flick of the wrist almost, and it allows a lot of people to like skip Senkos under docks, or if you're trying to skip your lure into, you know, some cover or something like that. But starting off as a complete beginner, I want you guys to start with the sidearm cast, because I believe it's the most simple. There's a lot less stuff that can interfere with you, because if you're going over your head, there's more that you can snag. Hopefully not got the fisherman behind you, you don't want to stick him in the back. The sidearm cast, it allows you to watch your rod the entire way so that you know what you're doing, you're most comfortable with it, and it's going to yield amazing results. And a lot of the time, that's what I use anyway. It's pretty helpful. Now, as we move on to actually casting the reel, we're going to follow all the best practices that we've been talking about, but we're going to make sure that that spool is lined up with the top of our rod. We're going to open our bail and just have the tip of our finger on the line. And when we start our sidearm cast, make sure that your bait is about 6 inches to a foot below the first eyelet of your rod, and this is going to give you the most accuracy. If you have more than a foot, say you have 2 or 3 feet, it's not going to give you as much action when you actually, you know, crank that bait out there. You're not going to have as much force with the rod, so it's going to make it a little bit harder to get those distance casts that you want. So you're going to want to have about 6 inches to a foot is a pretty good rule of thumb. Sometimes you might have a little bit more, but if you're looking for a distance cast, that's what you want to shoot for. So we're going to have the tip of our finger on that reel there, and we're going to grab on with both hands. I think this gives you the most accuracy and power. So we're going to load that rod up all the way back, and we're just gonna cast it like that, okay? You wanna make sure that you let your finger off at the right time. Now, this is something that might take a little bit of practice. If you're sending your rod up in, if you're sending your lure up into the air or right into the water, you're probably not letting off of the line at the right time. But this is something that's just gonna take a little bit of practice, which is actually leading us in to number 5 of this video, which is just to get out there and practice. Now, I would say get out on the water and start casting your spinning reel, but I understand that if some of us are really new, we might not feel comfortable even getting on the water yet. Just go make some casts in your backyard. If you have that new spinning reel that you've been dying to try, just take it out in the back and cast away, because the worst that can happen is you hit your tree or something like that and you got to untangle it. But if you're casting in your backyard, it's a really good way to start. Or if you want to hit the docks, you know, wherever is close to you in your home, definitely give that a try. But if you guys are so new to fishing that you don't have a spinning reel yet, I do have a video that I did do a product review on. It's the Abu Garcia Max Pro, and I'm going to link that in the side of this video here, so that if you guys want to check out a very budget-friendly beginner's spinning reel, you guys can check that out there. And if you guys got any value out of this video, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this in the future, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.